All right. Hi, my name is Shane Brodie. I'm a trans man. I'm traveling around the country talking to other trans people about their identity, kind of the place where they live, because that's often important. Kind of like the local laws, our national laws, the policies that are being discussed about us, unfortunately. Also about religion and people's own personal political beliefs, that sort of thing. Some of the trials and tribulations people have been through, that sort of thing. So I am in Oklahoma, and it is very different because I was just in the South and then on the Eastern Seaboard, and I've been escaping the snow. Western New York State just got something like 70 inches of snow.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I left at just the right time. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And I noticed coming in here to like western Arkansas and then here into Oklahoma, it got so dry suddenly.
Yep.
And I could actually see the sun. And I was so excited about that. I feel like I missed it when I was on the Eastern Seaboard. And the air is so clear and nice, and it's just really lovely here. It feels more like home than the eastern part of the country did. I spent most of my adult life in the West.
Oh.
So here we are, and I have a guest, and she's going to introduce herself just like I do with all my videos in whatever way she feels comfortable.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. My name is Danica, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a suburban mom.
All right.
So I like to joke that my gender identity
you're
is
on a
suburban
cul-de-sac.
mom.
Yes.
I'm on a cul-de-sac.
A real actual cul-de-sac.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I noticed here that the streets are very wide. Everything's really open. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because there's a lot more trucks and SUVs driven by people here.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about like pickup trucks. I was thinking the big trucks.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
More like pickup trucks. Here in this part of the country, at least, pickup trucks are the status symbol car.
Sure.
So
I was just in the Nashville area, and there was a lot of like muscle cars there.
Yeah. I mean, you see some muscle cars here. You see all sorts of cars here.
Sure.
But definitely pickup trucks. I used to have a pickup truck, actually.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that was.
Are you from here?
So I was raised here. I've been here since I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm an Oklahoman.
Yeah.
But I was actually born in Hungary.
Oh, okay.
So that's.
I don't know much about Hungary. Is there kind of an ethnicity that's associated with Hungary?
Yes. So Hungarian.
Hungarian. Okay.
My daughter. And the language is very much different from the surrounding languages. It's in an entirely separate.
Yeah. So I guess Hungarian sounds very different than the other languages that are nearby?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And unfortunately, while I used to be fluent, I don't know a whole lot of Hungarian, so I can't do one of those, where
I can tell you have
in.
a little bit of a different accent. A little bit, just tiny bit.
Yes. See, some people can tell that. Some people can't. I have a hard time telling if I do or not. But
I was just around a lot of Southern people, so you sound very different.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds very different than I throw in like a y'all in there, or a roof, or a root.
What is that? Roof? Oh, roof.
Roof
Oh,
and say roof.
Roof, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just in what I would call Louisville, but apparently it's Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So you can tell when somebody's not from there.
Right.
Or like Boise. No, it's Boise.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Idaho. Yes.
Fancy.
Yeah, totally. So you're a suburban mom. That's kind of your identity. That's interesting.
Yes.
I haven't had any suburban moms yet. How what's that like? What's your lifestyle like?
So right now I have 2 small children. The oldest entered kindergarten.
Yeah. So very young.
And so so very young. my wife, she's the one who works, and we're.
Do you stay at home then?
Yes.
Oh,
So
great.
right now I stay at home. I'm part-time.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
He wants to be part of the interview.
Yeah.
So right now I stay at home.
If he does that again, I can tie him up actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So right now I stay at
Mm-hmm.
home. I'm a part-time student, taking some classes
Okay.
online in chemical engineering.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So-
goodness gracious. Okay.
So that's actually
I thought you were going to say like nursing or art or something. Whoa, chemical engineering.
yeah. No, there's actually funny thing. My career change and my gender transition they're interlinked.
Okay.
They kind of. So back in 2020, that
Okay.
wonderful year
Did you
of
just
change.
Did you just newly come out then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I've talked to so many I keep mentioning this. I keep talking to so many trans women who have newly come out
Yeah.
during like COVID.
Yeah.
Like it almost gave people space to do some introspection and to change and
Yep.
it's like slowly at their own pace. Yeah.
The masks are also great because, when you're trying to hide that beard shadow.
Right. Right. That actually
so-
was a problem with me though.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm very short and I have a higher voice and
Right.
wearing big clothing in Alaska, people couldn't tell.
Right.
So covering up my beard was like, oh no.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that was in 2020.
Yes.
I like to joke that I didn't get into med school, so I became a woman instead.
Okay.
It's
So you were on that trajectory.
and so I have a degree in chemistry,
Okay. Like a bachelor's.
bachelor's and a master's.
Oh, and a master's too.
so
Okay.
I was working at a biotech,
Okay.
and
Like doing wet lab work or
yeah,
okay.
wet lab work in
Yeah.
in analytical chemistry.
How to use a pipette.
I did a lot of pipetting.
Yes.
A lot of pipetting.
I've done a little minor research in doing chemical pore water, chemistry of pore water in geology, like
Yeah.
of sediments and stuff, and it was just pipette.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
So I was doing that. I was not terrifically happy with my career, and
Why is that? I mean, if you want to say.
It was. So backing up, I guess, a little bit.
Okay. Did you want to treat
Hmm?
people, by the way, or you just really wanted to do the lab work? Was that like,
So
the choice?
well, okay. So here's the thing.
Okay.
I didn't really quite know what I wanted of myself
Okay.
until much later in life.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I was following a template, specifically my dad.
Does that have to do with gender or
Both.
your
Everything.
family dynamic or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. Raised here in Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
conservative state, and I was raised Mormon and Hare Krishna at the same time.
Really?
Yes,
That's wild.
yes, and there's a whole thing in
Mormon
that I love.
And let's definitely talk about Mormon and Hare Krishna. Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow.
you would think a dual religion thing would be like one comes from one parent, the other from the other
Right.
parent. Nope, it
Or
was
Catholic and Protestant or
right,
something.
right.
Yeah.
No, both from the same one, both from my
Wow.
dad. So yeah, that was that sort of religious blending, shall we say, in order to not have complete and total cognitive dissonance. I was able to kind of take things that are contradictory and kind
Okay.
of smudge them out a little bit and kind of get together and say, well, it's all looking at the same thing,
Okay.
just from different angles.
So just making it work.
So I made it work.
Okay.
I made it work. My brain is very good at that.
Okay. So with your family dynamic and then the religion and then also gender stuff mixed in there, you didn't quite know like a distinct path for yourself.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
well, but that's the thing. I thought I did. I was
Okay.
basically templating myself off my dad.
Okay.
And so I was trying that path. I tried really hard, and even if I didn't like it and I was dragging my feet, I was still pushing myself.
Yeah, and it's hard too if you're like a really smart person
Yeah.
who works really hard. Then that's
Right.
like expected of you.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. So anyway, I had been on track to medical school. Then I decided that I think I like chemistry a little better, so I did that for a bit. And then that wasn't quite going the direction I was hoping. Started shifting back to medical school when I got married. Started working in the lab and just kind of sort of on cruise control a little bit with life. First kid comes along, working on application for medical school.
Okay.
I get all the way through to the interview, and I get waitlisted.
Oh.
And then in March,
Yeah, it's extraordinary what it takes to get into medical school.
oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's
Especially if you want a particular place.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can cast a field to many of
Yes.
them and just play the lottery ticket or whatever. But
Yes,
yeah.
and I was only going to go to OU
right.
because
Because your family's here.
yeah,
Yeah,
we,
totally.
we didn't want to move.
Yeah.
And so in March 2020, second child is born. I get a call saying that I didn't get into medical school.
And that's right when
And
the COVID
That's
stuff was
right
happening.
when COVID
Yeah.
was starting to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason was it boiled down to they didn't really believe I wanted it bad enough. I had the grades.
Oh, wow.
And that was fine. But I didn't really have a whole lot of job shadowing, a lot of volunteers,
okay.
things like that. And I mean, they were right. I'm not going to debate them
Sure.
on that. They were absolutely right. The system worked.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that is part of the criteria, though, because medical school is already really exclusive, right?
Right.
And you have to get these really tough grades, and you have to be really like somebody with a lot of stamina. It's
Yes.
It's not kind to women. It's not kind to
Yes.
any sort of people with disability or
Yes.
cognitive ADHD or whatever.
Yes.
And then they expect you to have done volunteer work on top of that. It's very classist, actually. I mean, the whole thing is very classist.
Oh, yeah.
But that extra bit of volunteer work, people wouldn't assume that that's classist, but it is. It's volunteer work.
Right.
Right. And you have to be of means of some sort to do volunteer work.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like not have a family, for instance.
Right.
If you're a single person and fairly wealthy, yeah, you could do a lot of volunteer work out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was definitely one of those that I looked at and said, well, I guess I could make it work somehow in this pandemic. I guess I could.
With
But
the lab.
With
than-
somehow getting some sort of volunteer work.
Oh,
in
I
there.
see.
So
For a next application.
yes, for the next application cycle, because I was looking at let's do next application cycles.
Right.
But I just didn't want to.
Okay.
I just didn't want to. And
Did you feel defeated by that process of applying or something?
ish. I mean, yes and no. That I was dragging my heels a bit on it. Like I was applying because that's what I was to do. I was very concerned, and up until very recently, I was very concerned with doing the right thing, whatever that means.
So are you thinking of other people's needs instead of your own?
Yes.
Okay.
But yes, other people's needs as well as following a set of guidelines, commandments.
Like
if
you said,
will.
like a template.
Yes,
Yeah.
a template. And so at that time, I was only just starting to be willing to listen to myself, and I was looking at the prospect of applying again and saying, no, I don't think this is me. I don't know where I'm going to be going because, just having that that sort of direction was at least had some sort of comfort. You know, it's like, okay, I'm working towards this pathway.
Right.
And so
So if you're not on that medical
so if
school
I'm not on that medical
pathway,
school,
then it's kind of open and like that's kind of
and
chaotic.
then I have to make a decision,
Right,
and that's
right.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
So-
you have to decide, okay, well, I mean, you're obviously a highly skilled person, but where do you apply that in a focused way? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I looked at what I liked and what kind of work I liked, because I did like parts of my job.
Sure.
And to make a long story short, I was digging deep, saying, okay, what do I want? And I came up with, I think engineering is a lot closer, is going to bring me a lot closer to the work that I want to do.
Yeah, there's like also a kind of a nexus between the medical field and engineering.
Yes.
You know, like for instance, prosthetics.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And so I had to consider that, but if I'm being honest, so part of the reason for going to medical school and everything, some of that came from essentially before I met my wife, I want nothing more than to give my entire being to some sort of cause, to annihilate my ego in work.
I see.
For a while, I'd want to go into the military for nihilistic reasons. And
No, that's true though. Some people give over themselves, and part of that is like having some authority that will tell you what to do.
Yes.
And the military is very good at that. And
Oh,
they,
yeah.
they take care of you. You know, if you're with them long enough, you get a pension. So it can be a lifetime commitment. Totally.
yeah. And so,
Yeah.
so having to choose on my own was a very scary prospect.
Right.
But once I started to kind of open that up, the gender stuff started to pop out.
Really? About like what you want in the world.
So it was. It wasn't an immediate, you know, I want to be an engineer, and I think a woman. It was more like, yeah, I want to be an engineer, and
That's hilarious. I think
Right.
That's funny. Yeah.
I want.
I know a lot of trans women who are engineers. So
Right.
It's kind of a thing. Yeah.
So yeah, another one here. But it was. My mind was primed for actually listening to myself, and so
That's cool.
yeah,
That's cool that you can
so-
kind of pinpoint it, you know?
yeah,
That's great.
it's I've taken a lot of time to think about all that and how my process went, but I was reading up on some stories about Pride celebrations that be canceled due to COVID.
Oh, yeah, right.
And
I was up in Alaska at the time,
Yeah.
so I have no idea actually what was going on down here. So
Yeah.
tell me about it.
well,
Yeah.
so it was that Pride events were getting canceled because of the pandemic,
Right.
and people were talking about how, you know, these events are very important to them, etc.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and also feeling like that affected me. And until then, I hadn't really.
So did you think of yourself as being like a heterosexual man? I mean, that before this?
Straight-ish.
Straight-ish, okay.
So I had been identifying as bisexual on and off since
Okay.
I was 18.
Okay. So
but
you were kind of in the community a bit.
I wasn't in the community.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Okay. It was
I
a
didn't,
personal identity, but not a
yes,
community.
I didn't
oriented
really
one.
talk to too many people about
Okay.
it. I did a few,
Sure.
but I never really engaged in the community.
Okay.
I never really saw myself as part of the community.
Interesting. But it took being like considering yourself trans to feel like you were more part of it, I guess.
Ish. I mean, well, not quite.
Not
because
quite,
what
okay.
happened is that I was looking at that and saying, you know, I mean, I might be in a a cis man in a relationship with a woman, so you know, a straight passing
Yes,
relationship,
right.
but I'm still bi, and so
That's a very important point too.
and it is.
It really is. That's a very
Yes,
important
that's
point.
that's absolutely legitimate.
Yeah.
And so I came out to my wife, with a pun. It was
Oh, no.
Bisexual Visibility Day.
Oh no.
And I
I
said,
can feel it coming.
"Hey, sweetie, so it's Bi
Your
Visibility
partner's
Day."
laughing too. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, "Hey, sweetie, it's Bi Visibility Day." She's like, "Okay." It's like, "So that means in, a few more hours, I'm going to go back to being invisible." She's like,
Oh, no.
"Okay." It's like, because I'm bi. She's like, "Wait, what?" And I said, "Wait, I didn't tell you." She's like, "No." And it's like, "Oh, whoops." So, yeah. After I assured her that this was not a prelude into,
Yeah.
and I want to date men,
Yes,
and,
yes.
et cetera.
So you were already married and
Yes.
everything. Okay.
Already married.
Yeah.
We're monogamous. Nothing wrong with polyamory.
Yeah.
It's just not us.
Right.
But after assuring her that this didn't change anything,
Yes.
she was accepting.
Just an openness, more
It's
more
just-
communication.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
More communication. So we're like, okay, great. And I said, well, and I'm shortening like a few weeks later.
Okay.
Because while I'm reading up about bi stuff, I'm also running into things about non-binary people.
Okay.
And until then, I'd avoided looking up anything about trans people.
And this is on the internet.
This is on the
looking
internet.
at websites.
Yeah, websites.
What websites are you looking at? Like,
So it was Pinterest pins of screenshots of Tumblr posts.
Oh.
I
have no idea what that means.
Well,
I'm old.
right.
Anyway, I'm in my 50s.
It was
So
so
just say that for a lay person.
right. So essentially, people taking screenshots of posts and sharing it.
But what was the content of the post?
The content would be people talking about queer things, about
Okay.
bi identities.
Sure. Like Pride was a riot
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
Okay.
And things like that, and just kind of going down that sort of rabbit hole and everything. And
Did you follow any personalities out there? Like there are some people who document their transition or their coming out process, that sort of thing.
At the time, no.
No. Okay.
So I was just kind of reading and seeing what other people were talking about, and up until then, I purposefully avoided anything with trans things. I was very concerned with gender. I was very concerned with how to be a man, how to be the best man, and
that's always a concern. How?
Yeah.
Like, I struggle with that as well.
Yeah. It's
but on a different in a different way.
So it was. So I was very well aware of
Yes.
gender stuff, but in that sense, I had not really looked up any trans things until then because, and I do remember having this conscious thought: what if it turns out I'm trans? Better not ask questions you don't want the answers to.
Oh no.
So
something in there was like,
oh yeah.
Hey.
And the thing is,
that's hilarious.
I didn't know I was trans, and I didn't even suspect I was trans until 2020.
Sure.
So
okay.
I didn't have one of those, I knew since I was 4 years old and just kept,
Well, I will say you're the first person in my project who hasn't had an inkling since they were a child. So yeah, it is a very common. It's very common.
And that
that
was something very important for me to hear. That I didn't miss the boat, so to speak. That trans people's experience is varied.
Yes, it's very diverse. Yeah,
I had only seen a very narrow trans experience.
And how would you describe that?
It would be the person realizing when they're younger, they hate their body, they want to, they know they want to transition from the beginning.
Sure.
And they're straight. That was the other thing.
Okay.
Because I didn't really realize that trans lesbians existed.
Sure, yeah.
And
that's a whole other discussion too. That's like a whole other level. And I will tell you that's also been a struggle with activism as well. Because the sort of the regulating, it's not really a regulating body, but it's a body that looks at the ethics and the the efficacy of treatment of trans people and how we're treated by medical professionals and that sort of thing. And they used to be what we might consider now even transphobic, because they would consider somebody's sexuality in whether they would receive trans treatment.
Yep.
And it took a lot of activism to get to the point now where it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter because they're separate things in somebody's life. And so it's a lot better.
Just hearing about different people's...
Yeah. But still, even with that, you didn't know that was also possible. So
I didn't know,
there still needs to be some activism around that, it sounds like.
And it's... so just hearing about that and realizing, some of this might apply to me. And so...
Have you heard the term sapphic, by the way?
Yeah.
That's like the new one.
Yes.
Because you seem more sapphic.
Yes.
You know?
I would...
That's just,
I would describe myself as sapphic.
I shouldn't say those things. But, you know,
it's okay.
I'm saying that because you seem a little bit hipper.
Okay.
Yes, I mean that as such a compliment.
Thank you.
Yeah, you seem like very young and hip and with it, you know. Yeah. So totally.
But
like lesbian sounds a little stodgy to me, you know.
It's so for me personally, the way I would describe my sexuality, the easiest way is queer.
Queer, yeah.
If I want to go on a little bit more,
word. I love queer.
I love it.
Yeah.
If I want to go into more sapphic, if someone understands that.
Yeah.
Bi, but not. Bi, but leaning more towards lesbian.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where I'm not entirely as worried about the label.
Sure.
And
even with bi, people think of like a bi person as a partier or something, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's still a thing out there.
Yeah, it's one of those that, because I'm a woman, I love women, I'm with my wife, you know, it's kind of like, well, it's all good, so I don't feel the need to really explore it that much.
Yeah. I love queer though, because it kind of encompasses everything. Yeah.
It does. It's a great word. And that's actually what happened next is I was saying, well, since I'm bi, that means that I'm part of the queer community.
Yeah.
So maybe let's queer it up and like paint my nails or something, you know.
Queer it up, queer everything up.
Yeah. And so I got comfortable. I felt like I was allowed to do that.
Yeah.
To play around
That's
with
actually
gender.
why I love queer, because it's fun, right?
It is.
Yeah, totally.
It is. And just not really having to label it as, I'm exploring my gender, but, I'm just queering things up a bit.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be that serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
It felt safer. It felt more accessible to me. And
some people take another route where they go into the cross-dressing community.
Yeah.
Which is more of the straight world.
Right.
Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes.
Yeah. And that's another thing is I thought that was the only route as well.
Okay.
That, you know, you have to be a cross-dresser and then, you know, figure out that you're trans.
Sure.
And so I paint my nails. You know, my wife helps me with that. And
that's fun. I used to do that for my girlfriends, actually. I would give them manicures and pedicures.
Oh,
totally.
That's sweet. And so I was looking up things on how to be able to keep the male identity while at the same time doing all this more feminine stuff.
Sure. And that's where the cross-dressing community maybe came in?
It was more of a I was finding out about non-binary identities and saying, well, I might be non-binary, and then also finding out that a lot of people, when they figure out their sexuality, then they start exploring their gender. And so once again, I came out to my wife with a meme. by showing her meme of something like that, and she's like,
You're
okay,
such
that's
an
interesting.
engineer.
Yeah, I know. And then again, she was like,
hilarious.
okay, well, what's this? And I was like, it means I'm going to be questioning my gender, but don't worry, I'm not trans or anything.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
you know, it's just playing around with it. That's all.
Sure.
And she was
Well, I'm
completely
imagining
on
if
board.
you're
Right.
doing your nails and this maybe is not so much of a surprise or
Right.
Yeah.
So it was. I started getting into makeup. I started getting into. I started.
and you're
looking-
wearing some pretty cool makeup
Oh,
there.
thank you.
It's like like early 60s style.
Yes,
Yes.
that's kind of the aesthetic
Okay.
that I like to go to.
Sure.
A little bit of that retro,
Right.
blending together the decades. So
Yeah. I bet you go to vintage shops and stuff probably.
not a whole lot.
No.
I'm right now building up my wardrobe with some basics.
Okay,
Also,
yeah.
vintage shops are kind of hard. So even when I was dressing with male clothes,
Sure.
it was still hard to find my size.
I understand. Yeah, I'm on the other end. So it's very hard for me because I'm smaller and wide, right? So
Right.
It's
So
just difficult.
it's
yeah.
just difficult to find my size. And then,
Yes.
when I'm shopping for, women's clothes, suddenly it becomes
Yes.
much harder.
Yeah, but there are brands that
there
have
are.
like a retro style, like they
Yeah.
actually take templates. Let's use that
Mm-hmm.
word again, from vintage clothes,
Mm-hmm.
and they will have new fabrics that they use, like kind of wild new fabrics. But it's like they're cut and styled the same way as they were back then, which is nice.
I'll
Yeah,
have to look into that.
yeah.
But yeah, so I was looking into that. I was I was wearing some leggings. I was wearing some skinny jeans.
Oh yes.
And
I always
was-
wonder about those skinny jeans.
Yeah,
some of
kinda
those muscle
sus.
guys that are wearing those,
Right.
and they're like tight. I'm like,
Right.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's one of those that I was playing around with it a little bit, but I'll still try and juggle it.
Yeah.
And I remember though when I would take off my nail polish. I remember like very early on when I was taking off my nail polish, it felt like I was like scraping off part of my soul because I did not feel comfortable at all wearing it.
Okay, so this
to
was
work.
like in private
This
that you
was
were
in
doing.
private.
Okay,
This was in, and when I say private, that includes my wife.
yeah, in the home.
in the home.
Yeah.
So-
So when you would take it off, that means that you had to kind of go back to being somebody
Yeah.
else. Okay.
So and it was more and more feeling like I had to go to be someone else, and I was reading more about trans people and their dysphoric experiences, and I guess trying out the thought, so to speak, like
Okay.
thinking, okay,
Could this be a community I could be involved with?
Yeah.
or-
Well, are these my thoughts?
Okay.
Is that what I'm feeling?
Sure.
Like trying to figure out what I'm feeling because a
Sure.
lot of stuff was, a lot of my identity I felt was shoved away. Like as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, I didn't really express myself. I was very confused at why people would want to do any sort of self-expression,
Okay.
like stickers and things like
Okay,
that. I
sure.
liked my school uniform. I liked being told what to do.
Okay.
I was
Well, that's useful for the kind of work that you do, like
Yes.
chemistry and
Oh, yeah.
engineering. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
perfect, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
and so
But that's just your part of who
It's-
you are.
it's part of who I am, but some of it was also a little bit of a safety mechanism.
Yeah. So you're
so-
kind of self-censoring in
Yes.
there. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm slowly figuring things out, and
Doesn't sound that slow, actually. It sounds like you reached a point and then you were just like, okay, I'm going to take this step and another one and another one and another one. Like it.
okay, yeah. To
Yeah.
be fair, it was like that, and
Yeah.
I think that's why subconsciously, like my subconscious hid it away because it knew that once I started,
Yeah.
I would not stop.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right. And why would you? I mean,
Right.
you look like you're
Right.
having fun.
Oh yeah, No, this is great. The more I was looking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would try things out, and the things I liked, I kept doing.
Yeah.
And for a while, I was uncomfortable with calling myself a woman. I was like, I'm going to keep trying things out, and if I happen to land on a woman, then great. But otherwise, I'm trying to avoid going down a path.
Sure.
Because that's what I had been doing all my life.
Right.
It's like, okay, this is the pathway that I need to go.
Right. Or concretizing something when you're still growing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
instead it was
Totally.
it was a lot more organic because I kept trying things. So April of the following year, April 2021, I was laid off from my job. Well, I say laid off.
What was it like in terms of COVID and stuff? Like, were there still lockdowns down here?
Yeah, but I mean, there was some masking, but there was as soon as you got out of the city, there was a lot less people wearing masks.
I mean, what was the economic situation
the economic
like?
situation?
Yeah.
I mean,
because up in Alaska things were pretty closed down, and then they opened up a little bit.
It was kind of like that. They shut things down when one of the Thunder basketball players was testing positive.
Okay.
And that was the whole thing.
That's what it took.
The basketball game got canceled, and they started shutting things down.
Right. Well, I mean, very famously, that also happened, like, with HIV/AIDS, like with Rock Hudson. Like, people didn't really connect it with anybody but, like, a gay male subculture.
Right.
And then suddenly it was the matinee star.
Right.
And it was like, oh, this is real.
Right. It was and so at work for me, because we were a biopharmaceutical company, so we could be listed as essential workers. So I went back to work after parental leave. You know, I had 2 weeks parental leave. Went back to work. My desk was moved 5 times because it all had to be social distance. I was wearing a mask.
Okay.
I was wearing a mask and a face shield.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, it was okay, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
but,
by doing lab work though, you're probably used to all like protocols and stuff.
You stick a bunch of PPE on. It's just like, okay, just tell me.
I used to deal a lot with HF, so that's a whole extra.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's a whole extra thing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's
because I was a geologist, so you got to boil rocks down.
Right. Yeah, no, the HF gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So anyway, I was still working. My productivity was cratering due to, so I was having issues due to my ADHD, which I didn't find out until I was 30. So it was just a few years before then. So I'm learning all sorts of things about myself.
Sure.
And the gender dysphoria didn't help. And so, I get fired after the first quarter. I get fired for poor productivity. I kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And
so it had nothing to do with any sort of gender expression or anything. Okay.
No, it did not. Because I kept that closeted because even though I knew I would probably be okay, I still did not want to answer questions.
Do they have a pretty good corporate culture, like a non-discrimination policy and stuff? Okay.
I mean, they do as far as race and ethnicity and immigration status and all that is concerned. There was a trans woman who was there a few years prior, and my then supervisor had made some comments about her, and me, a very non-confrontational person, suddenly felt that I absolutely needed to confront my boss.
And this was before all this?
This was before all that.
Okay, right.
But for some reason I need to be a really good ally.
Awesome.
And so it was, but she was, I'm not sure exactly how she was treated by her coworkers because she wasn't in the same department as me.
Yeah.
But I could kind of tell at one company thing that she was like she wasn't embedded in with other
Okay.
people, talking with other people. She was kind of just there.
Yes, I
and
understand.
Yeah.
So she wasn't part of the in-group
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, okay.
So,
So then you're fired or laid off
Yeah.
or however
Yeah.
that's put. And then, so you have more time to yourself now.
yes. And so, for a while, I am job hunting, but I'm not. It took me a while to finally admit to myself, no, I really do need this time. And so I'm there thinking about my gender, trying to figure things out, because I figured that I need to get this sorted out before, I go to wherever I go. So,
So the next job or the next stage.
right, exactly.
Okay.
So
all right.
I figured now's the time to sort it out and
Yeah,
just
great.
really work at it.
I think a lot of people took that opportunity,
Yeah.
which I it's kind of a weird blessing in disguise,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not that you want a pandemic and
Yeah.
quarantine to happen,
Or
but
be laid off or whatever.
But you
Yeah,
you deal with what you play the hand you're dealt.
That's right.
So
That's right.
So my wife was there supporting me the entire way through.
Great.
I didn't hide anything from her, and that was another thing. It wasn't until about 2012 that when I saw on Orange is the New Black the first depiction of a trans woman where she is not immediately kicked out by her partner.
Oh, okay.
So, just seeing even the fictional description,
Sure.
a partner being supportive.
Sure.
I
Is that with the Laverne Cox character?
yes,
Okay.
Laverne Cox.
She's the actress,
yes,
yeah.
she's the actress. She was playing Sophia.
Okay. I saw a couple episodes
yeah.
of that, but I don't know much about that
Yeah,
show. I just know that she's in it.
Yes.
And wow, she is such a good advocate for trans
Yeah.
people. Talk about like a powerhouse, you know?
yeah.
Totally.
She's amazing. Love
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And it was, again, this is 2012, so it was
Yeah.
a while ago. So I'm just filing this information back.
Yeah.
I'm also, during this time, filing information way of seeing how people are treating trans people and how some things are getting better.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, that
and-
was kind of on the trajectory of
Yeah.
things getting better. I think we're kind of regressing at
so.
the moment. But
yeah,
yeah.
there's a backlash, but at least
I don't
things aren't
even
as...
I don't even know if it's a backlash though, because I mean it's really an aggressive move by the right what they're
Yeah.
doing. You know.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's a backlash because there's so few trans people out there. It's just an issue that it's made into a wedge issue is what it is.
Yeah.
Because it has really nothing to do with trans people themselves.
Oh yeah, it's about control and
Yeah,
power.
it's about control and power. Yep.
And so, despite all those
Mm-hmm.
laws and that kind of nonsense coming up, I would hear a trans woman on a leftist podcast I was listening to.
Okay. Yeah.
And everyone used her pronouns
Yeah.
correctly. Nobody introduced her as, oh, and this is Allison, local trans woman, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
She only brought up that she was trans when it was relevant to what she was immediately talking
Sure.
about.
Sure.
No one gave her any issue. And I remember listening to that and thinking, haha, maybe I should transition, so I can, be respected by people. And I'm like, wait, where did that come from? But I think what it was is that I saw heard since those podcasts for the first time, trans people actually being able to, normal's not the word, but at least having the respect that's due.
Yeah. And it's not that the trans part is the forefront of everything.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's a full person there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And so
who's integrated into their communities.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of people want that. I think
Yeah.
I think people look at trans people who are doing activism
Yes.
and they are doing a specific thing.
Yes.
So they have to put it in the forefront. They have to yell
Yes.
about it. They have to be really pushy. I mean, that's how activism gets done.
Right.
Right. But that's not the vast majority of trans people.
Exactly.
And also there's some quiet activism in just being a trans person anywhere.
Your existence is resistance.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And seeing and hearing those stories, because you hear the activism stuff, it's a little bit loud.
Yeah.
So,
it's supposed to
which
be.
it should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely should be.
Yeah. Democrats don't do anything either if activists don't, push them. I mean, really.
Right. And sometimes then
they try and take, credit for it, and it's like, okay.
It's like,
and then they're like, oh, let's be pragmatic and let's not, support trans people now. I mean, how many times has that happened?
Yeah.
Or gay people and...
Yeah, it's just like...
Even our own supposed advocacy organizations have had to be pushed to support trans people. Like the HRC used to not be good about trans people at all.
But yeah, so, you see the activism, you see the political stuff. But then when you hear the quieter stories, the smaller stories... people's lives, and seeing that, oh no, it is possible.
Yeah, and even the activists have their own private lives too.
Right, exactly, and just realizing that stuff exists.
Yeah,
all of that was kind of brought into my head, kind of simmering and everything, like, and then I finally, because in May 2021. I'm there. I'm still sort of identifying as non-binary, genderqueer, or something, and but I haven't really found a gender home, so to speak, because I'm reading about non-binary stories and saying this doesn't quite match me.
Sure.
But I'm not cis.
Sure. I think in the last few years too, the non-binary community has been louder.
Yes.
So in some ways, it makes sense that you would see more of that. Yeah.
And to be clear, like, I want to be very careful with this. For me, seeing non-binary as was something that felt like it was approachable to kind of get my toes in it.
Of course.
A little bit. Because before then, it was like, well, if I experiment with gender, I'm going all the way over. It was like, oh, no. I can experiment a little bit, and maybe I'm non-binary.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a phase. But to be absolutely clear, non-binary people are valid, 100% valid in their gender. Yeah,
and it's a destination in unto itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then some people, even if it's their destination, they're still fluid within that.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those that I seeing their stories. It gave me the confidence to try out some things on my own.
Sure.
But I finally got to a point where it was, there's the one gender I haven't really tried out, and that's all the way over on the other side of the, male female binary, and that's trying out being a woman.
Yeah.
And I was reading up in the Gender Dysphoria Bible. It's an online web source that collects trans people's story about dysphoria, and I was reading through it, and I couldn't stop reading through it. And I finally got to a point where I was ugly crying in the driveway.
Yeah.
Because I realized, I'm a trans woman. I'm all the way over.
Well, that's great that you found something that you could connect with.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's story, that they have intense dysphoria, body dysphoria, whatever.
Yeah.
But, if that's how you connected with it, that's wonderful. I'm glad that there's that resource about it.
Yeah.
I don't know about it.
Yeah.
I've been sort of not connecting with a lot of websites and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And just because I'm kind of post a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
And for me, again, my dysphoria wasn't like intense, and that's part of the thing, is that it was like, well, I don't hate my body. I'm used to it. That was the other thing. I didn't hate being a guy.
Sure.
I didn't hate being a man. Because that's all I That's all I was up until then.
Right. And you were making do, like you
I was
said.
making do.
Right.
But once I started to be a woman, I realized I liked that much better.
Okay.
And so
there was kind of this opening to joy or something.
Yes, I was chasing the gender euphoria.
Okay.
As opposed to running away from the gender dysphoria.
Oh, there we go.
So
that's the quote.
Yeah. And even then, it was still a few months before I finally was ready to, admit. And so I go to Pride with my wife.
You mean admit like publicly?
Well,
or to your friends, or
admit it to her, admit it to myself.
Okay.
And start taking steps in transition.
Sure.
So May, I had that was the egg crack, and I'm like still a little bit in denial, kind of like I just kind of want to wait to see if this disappears or not. It didn't. I go to Pride. I'm dressed up. By the way, I still had a beard. I had a beard from age 17 until
17.
34. So that's like, what, 17 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really early for a beard, too. Yeah.
So I stopped shaving November 1st when I was 17. Remember that was.
Wow.
And I'd only clean shaven a few times. Now,
Sure.
I would, sometimes shave down to the goatee.
Yeah.
I did the mustache a couple times.
That's basically what I do too.
Yeah.
I let it grow out and then I kind of play with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then sometimes I shave it off like I did a ways back.
Yeah. So it's, but I wasn't ready to shave off the beard quite yet, because I was like, once I shave that, I won't be growing it back.
Yeah,
so
and that's like half your life,
right?
That's
exactly
invested in this,
exactly
thing on your face.
There's a lot of
curtain there.
There's
on your
a lot
face.
of ego investment
Yes.
into it, and so
your beard was your beard.
my beard was very much my beard.
Yes.
There's truth to denial beard.
Yes.
So we were at Pride. I was in a skirt and stockings, and had makeup on, clip-on earrings, paint my nails, and the beard.
Yeah. I love that. I love seeing the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence too.
Yes.
They're often bearded,
Yes.
gay men, and they go in
Yes.
drag. I love them.
Yeah. No. So, and it was like, well, I'm going to Pride, and this will be, I'll be accepted there, and I was.
Yeah,
I was.
it's
It was
fun.
great. I got some compliments.
Totally.
And then about a month or so later, I finally sit down with my wife. I'm like, sweetie, I think I'm a trans woman. I think I really am a woman. She looks at me and she says, yeah, no kidding. Or,
Yeah.
Did you just figure this out?
Okay.
It's like, I thought we were past this. It's like, what's going on? It's like,
Okay.
well, I was in denial. But no, my wife, again, has been 100% supportive, you know. And so I start taking steps with, some clothing things. I look into hormones, and I get to the point, I look into laser, I look into hormones.
Yeah.
I actually don't shave my beard until the night before my appointment for hormones.
Oh my! Wow.
Yeah.
So you want to present yourself well to the doctor or something?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was, I knew that the doctor wouldn't give me trouble for that.
Yeah.
It was more of a personal,
Yes.
a
transition.
Yeah, a transition.
Transition.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
and your relationship with that doctor, is it somebody in the trans community had recommended? Is this person part of a clinic?
So I went through a Plume.
Okay.
So
online.
Yes,
okay.
online.
Yeah.
And so connected me with the doctor that was local, or had license in Oklahoma, etc.
Okay. So they connected you with somebody you could see in person.
It was done online. It was a video chat.
Oh, I
So,
see.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
This
So it
was
is still online.
It's still online.
Okay.
It's still, there's still a pandemic
Okay.
sort of going on.
Sure.
But even still, so I did talk to him face to face through the video screen.
Sure.
But but yeah, so I started hormones, and
Was it by informed consent?
oh yes,
Okay.
yes, that's the thing. It was informed consent because by then I was only about 90% sure I was a woman. The other 10% was denial.
That's pretty good, 90%. I mean,
Well, I say 90%,
Sure.
but it was greater than 50, but it wasn't 100.
sure.
And so,
Well, it's something you have to grow into, just like we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
saying earlier.
yeah, exactly. And so with the question with hormones, I said, well, with hormones, for me, what that would change, most everything is reversible. The only irreversible stuff is breast tissue growth, testicular shrinkage, and possible sterility.
Sure.
Those take a little while to set in, so I've got a little bit of time. And honestly, as far as, like, I'm fine with those changes,
Yeah.
being permanent. So
Yeah. It's good
let's
to
go ahead and give it a shot.
It's good to discuss those things, though,
Yeah.
because for some people, those factors, even though they might want to physically transition,
yeah,
hold them back from doing that, which is
Yeah.
fine. But then also, they are still a trans person. You don't have to go through these physical changes.
exactly.
Also, sometimes people have medical conditions
Yes.
that preclude them from doing physical transition
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, so just to be clear, it was the hormone replacement
Yeah.
therapy was part of my transition,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not doesn't have to be part of everyone.
That's right. And I joked with somebody on a previous interview, and we were like, and thank goodness it's irreversible. I mean,
Right.
Reversible, irreversible, or whatever. That's kind of a buzzword recently,
Right,
by
yeah.
the TERFs. They're using that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why people take the hormones,
Right.
is because they want to change themselves. They
Right.
want to change their bodies.
Right.
So yeah, it's irreversible.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know?
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that I figured within a month, I should be able to maybe tell.
Yeah.
And just to be absolutely clear, I'm not a doctor. This is something you should, if you're thinking about hormones, talk to your doctor. Like,
Warning, warning.
Yeah, like, just to be clear, this was my Danica thoughts.
Yes.
That I'll give it a month and see how it goes.
Sure.
Tried it a month, kept going.
Yeah. Well, they do change you. They change you physically, but then they also change some of your emotional capacity and.
Yes.
I mean, just like cisgendered people who go through puberty
Yes.
and then also menopause,
Yes.
or for men, their testosterone wanes as they get older. I don't know what you'd call that, menopause, but some people joke about that. But it is something that happens.
Yeah.
And so there are changes that they go through as well. So I would think it would be a point of sympathy or empathy.
Yeah.
That everybody kind of goes through these changes. Yeah.
So, and I liked what was happening, so
Yeah.
I kept going,
Awesome.
and that kind of solidified things.
Yeah, and some people do go on
Yeah.
hormones, and then they decide it's not for them.
Yeah,
and so they stop.
Totally valid.
Yeah, and some people go for kind of intermediate change.
Yes.
Too, like maybe somebody like
Microdosing.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe somebody like me would just want like a little bit of a mustache or something
Right.
like that. That's kind of their end point
Yeah.
that they wanted.
And again, totally valid.
It happens.
I asked to start off a little bit small to see how it was, and then we ramped up.
Yeah.
Because again, this is going through my medical
Ramp it up.
provider. Yeah, ramping it up. And so my plan, and so I was not publicly out of the closet at that time. I was still, I was sort of going out, somewhat androgynously dressed. Sometimes more femme, but not super
To like
femme.
queer events or something.
No, just out and about.
Okay, shopping.
Shopping and things like that. And there were, once a month I did need to dress up in masculine clothes, and that was to go to lodge. So,
Oh, you're part of a lodge.
yes, I'm an ex-Mason.
Oh my goodness.
I had joined the fraternity
Sure.
when I was 18.
Okay.
You know,
There's a lot going on here.
oh yeah, nah.
Mason, Mormon.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna,
Okay.
yeah. So, you know, a lot of different things. I met some great guys there, you know, but in 2020, the Grand Lodge had passed a resolution that specifically barred transgender people. Now,
All transgender people.
yes.
Okay.
And the way, so a little bit of background. So a fraternity, they specifically say man. The Grand Lodge of England, which is, it's its own thing, but, you know, the other Grand Lodges kind of look to it to see,
Sure.
you know, what they're doing. But due to a lawsuit, they made a new rule change where they allowed for any member who transitions to remain as part of it. They
Okay.
would still be referred to as brothers because they wouldn't change the language, but they could use their name and they didn't have to dress in a suit.
Okay.
As long as they dressed nicely.
Okay.
And then also part of that, they allowed trans men who had, I believe it was finished transitioning.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure.
Was that the language, like, had finished?
I don't know if that was the
Okay.
language, but that was the implication
Okay.
that they weren't going to take trans men who were just starting out on their transition.
All right.
So,
Fully cooked.
yes, fully. And so, Oklahoma, the Grand Lodge of Oklahoma, some of the Masons there had seen that, and they had decided to do the exact opposite. So, saying that no Mason can be can show off a gender. First off, it said no Mason can take any sort of medical, surgical, or even therapy
Oh my.
for transition. So,
Wow. Did they allow ED treatments?
I know, right? So,
It's the same stuff.
right? So,
Or birth control.
so
Are their wives on birth, you know?
right. Well, it was, and it was. So they specifically had that, and they also had some transphobic language that I don't bears repeating.
Yeah, don't do it.
For disallowing trans men.
Okay.
And so that passed in 2020. That's right at the beginning of my gender stuff.
And was being a Mason important to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was,
I don't even know what they do, frankly. I mean,
it's
is it just like a business organization? Or?
no, the part social club, part there's some esoteric spiritual aspects to it.
Okay. Does that also come out of your family experience? Like, was your dad a Mason or something?
My dad wasn't, but his grandfathers were.
Okay.
And that's kind of what influenced me to like, well, let me try this out.
Sure.
And so I'd made some friends there, you know, where we could have these deep philosophical discussions and things. And
Would you say Masonry is part of, like, theosophy, or is that different?
Without getting too deep into the weeds on some stuff, it's in that realm.
It's in that realm, yeah.
It's, you know, so Rosicrucians, Masons, there can be some overlap.
Okay.
But there is kind of that Western Hermetic, Western esoteric tradition
Okay. All right.
that pops up. And so, so this was, again, 2020, right as I'm just starting to question things. I remember. And so that was the one and only Grand Lodge I attended, and it was because of COVID, it was virtual, so,
so
people called in, or people got in there virtually as opposed to all having to be there in person.
So, did that mean that you were no longer a member?
So here's what it was.
Okay.
It was hotly debated, and it almost didn't pass. I want to be clear. It wasn't like it was an easy rubber stamping
So
thing.
it narrowly passed.
It narrowly
Okay.
passed. It had to get 2/3 to pass.
Okay.
But it almost didn't get the 2/3.
Okay.
So
Well,
and it
2/3 is pretty good. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
But it was, again, hotly debated. And a lot of the debate was not, whether or not to allow women. It was more of a, okay, this is a little hasty. Let's talk about this and figure out exactly what. But anyway, went through. And
So it was a new issue for them, I guess, to discuss.
yes.
Okay.
But the thing is, it wasn't precipitated by any one particular case.
Okay.
It was just kind of...
Just an issue out there.
Yeah, just an issue out there due to changing social
Okay.
circumstances. I think that's what the word
So they went
is.
on the wrong side of it. Yeah.
So, and so even though I knew the guys in the lodge would have been fine with me exploring my gender and stuff, I felt scared that as soon as I say that I'm doing that they're going to kick me out. And so I kept it from them, and so that drove a bit of a wedge. And so come around.
Well, if you're becoming more and more out,
yeah,
and then there's these things that are sort of part of your former life.
Yes.
I'm imposing that term on you, but
former life is the term I would use.
And they're sort of clinging to a previous identity. It would make sense. I don't know. That's kind of like in the past in a way.
Yeah, it's part of transition, and that was the social aspect of transition that to me was irreversible.
Yeah.
That once I came out, that would be it.
And hard too, because you're losing friends basically, acquaintances.
Yeah, it's I'm losing an activity that is, because really I wouldn't see them a whole lot outside the lodge. We would sometimes, but for the most part, that's why I saw them. And a lot of it's, we've got families, we're busy. Making the meetings once a month is, it's tough, but we did. And I actually took a leadership position. I was worshipful master in 2022, and so I accepted moving up.
Even though you've transitioned.
Well, even though I started HRT, I was, I still accepted that, all right, let's move it up, because my thought was 2022, I'm going to stay closeted the entire time. And then in 2023, I'll come out, and that's a year or so, and, I'll be, well cooked, so to speak. Poof, suddenly woman.
Sure.
That didn't happen.
You seem like you're already there, though. I mean, am I getting the wrong impression here?
No.
Okay.
It's one of those that I started HRT. I then eventually realized that I wanted to be more and more like this more and more often. The more people I came out
you tried to make it linear, and it was not linear.
It was not. It was
okay.
Not. It was not. And
there's that engineer in there wanting that linear.
I wanted to get it just right, but nope. Nope. So then I get to my what is it? It's coming around 2022, and I'm coming out more and more.
Yeah.
I hop onto Facebook in April, and I say, hey, I've been off this for 5 years. Things have changed, but I'm going to be kind of changing things up a little bit. So I changed my profile picture to one without a beard, but not femme. And then I don't come out as trans then. I just say there's some changes, but I use female emojis, and then I proceed to post nothing but trans memes for like 2 solid months. So basically, and then
So you weren't personal about it, but you just flooded the airwaves. Here we go.
Put a lot of stuff in saying,
that's great.
Trans rights, things like that. And
let the memes do the talking.
It was a soft coming out, because a lot of people that I would come out to, who would get in touch with me through Facebook. Oh, you're back on. I'd be like, yep, and I'm transitioning, sort of thing. They were like, oh yeah, Yeah, I kind of figured.